Hello, and welcome to Life with Francie podcast, a place where you will find all kinds of conversation like mental health, self-love, self-care, trauma, hobbies, and more. With this podcast, I want to create a place where we support one another in business and personal life. Hope you enjoy this episode. Now, let's get the show started. On today's episode, I have the pleasure to talk to Scott DeLuzio. Oh, I forgot to ask him for the last name, who wrote the book Surviving Son, where he talks about his experience fighting as an infantryman in Afghanistan and losing his brother in action while they both were overseas. This book provides the reader with the details of what it was like to fight in combat and the emotional struggle that comes with losing a loved one and unexpectedly in combat. He is also a podcast host where he shares inspirational stories of veterans to provide hope and healings to other veterans who listen to the show. I hold a special as part of my heart for military as I have military family members. And so I want to thank you first for your service and say I'm so sorry for your loss. And now let's welcome you to the show. And what is life with Scott?
Well, thank you so much for first off for having me on the show and for um, you know for your gratitude towards my service and all the service members out there who have sacrificed so much and served. We all really appreciate the people like you out there who have that positive mentality going out towards us. So thank you again for having me.
Yeah, no, you're welcome. When I read your story, I was like, oh my God, yes, I can't wait to have this conversation with him because I have people that have served, and right now I wish I could know all her titles because she has like she just got a promotion and I wish I could know she's a sergeant or something like that. Like she's big and I wish I knew. But anyways, tell us about you.
Sure thing. Yeah. So, like you said, I served in Afghanistan in 2010. I joined the Army National Guard. I lived in Connecticut at the time, and so I was in the Connecticut Army National Guard for about 6 years. I joined after my brother Stephen joined the National Guard. He's my younger brother, but he joined first. He started going to school up in Vermont at a school called Norwich University, which is like a military college, and there was a few people there who were already in the National Guard. He got to talking to them, got to learn a little bit about what it was like there, and decided to join as well. And so I got to learn a little bit about what it was like to be in the military through him. And when he went through all of that, I had this kind of renewed sense of patriotism and sense of duty and all of that. Um, you know, After 9/11, a lot of us had that kind of surge of patriotism, wanting to help protect the country and all that kind of stuff. And I was one of those people. I was in college at the time. I decided I wasn't going to drop out of college and join the military. I figured I'd stay in and uh, you know finish my degree, and then if the military still needed people for whatever was going on, I would reconsider at that point. But after my brother joined, it kind of renewed that interest in the military that I had. And about a year after he joined, I started hearing reports in the news that the military was struggling to meet their recruiting numbers. And that to me just really angered me. And I said, where are all those people from, after 9/11 who wanted to join the military and go fight and get some payback or whatever it was that they wanted. And then I thought to myself, well, I was one of those people. I still haven't done anything about it. So I I said, well, I'm still young enough. I'm still fit and capable of joining the military. So why not me? And so uh, about a week later, 2 weeks later or so, I joined or went to a recruiter's office, signed all the paperwork, and did all the stuff that I needed to do. And then, went shipped off to basic training a little while later, and the rest is, kind of history. But yeah, eventually got deployed to Afghanistan in 2010. My brother and I were both infantrymen. And for people who are unfamiliar with what that is and what we do, that's basically the frontline fighting, the people who are the boots on the ground, if you will, the people who are going door to door and looking for the bad guys and that type of stuff. So we were basically the trained for that type of mission. Tragically, like you mentioned, my brother was killed in action while we were both over in Afghanistan, and that was easily by far the worst day of my life. I was I was out on a mission when I got notified that he was killed, and so I was out in the middle of nowhere, in the middle of some random Afghan village, thousands of miles away from home and all my loved ones. Fortunately, I had the guys that I served with who were there to support me and help me out get through that. But unfortunately, about 15 minutes after finding out that my brother was killed, we started taking fire from the village that we just came out of. And so I had to figure out a way to stuff down the grief and the sadness and all the emotions that were going through me at that point. I had to stuff all that stuff down and figure out, how am I going to survive this firefight that I'm now in. Not only did I have to survive, but I was also a squad leader at the time, and I had about 10 or so soldiers that I was responsible for as well. And so I needed to make sure not only did I survive, but also that they all survived. And I had to provide them with the leadership that they needed. And so really, I had to just take all of that stuff, box it up, and stuff it down deep inside of me and kind of almost forget about the fact that my brother died. And that's like an incredibly hard thing to do. Just, not even 20 minutes after finding out that he was killed. You have to just kind of stuff it all down and put it away. And, for soldiers who've been in combat, who've experienced losses while in combat, they have described similar experiences where, their friend has been killed, maybe next to them or near them or whatever, but they're still actively being shot at and stuff. And they can't just sit there and be sad. They have to continue to fight, and they have to figure out how they're going to get their head back in the game. And it's a difficult thing to do, especially when you come back home. You have to figure out how to unbox that stuff, all those emotions that you stuff down, and figure out how to process them and deal with them in a healthy way. And a lot of times we don't want to do that because there's sadness in there, and who wants to be sad? And there's anger, and there's all these other things that are stuffed into that box, and who wants to deal with any of that stuff, right? Like it would be much better. Life would be much better if we just kind of took all the sadness and the anger and the
Yeah.
everything else and just kind of shoved it aside. And but that's not reality. We can't just do that. So we had when I got back, I actually came back home. I was in the United States less than 48 hours from the time that I found out that my brother was killed, which is like warp speed when you're talking about military travel. Like that was super fast. But they kind of expedited some of my travel just because of the circumstances that I was under. Um, I was able to actually escort my brother's body out of Afghanistan to Kuwait. And then, from there, I was able to make it home, sometime, in the next 12 hours or so. And so it was a super fast turnaround as far as how quickly I got home. Which seems like it would be a nice thing. I'm home with family and loved ones and all that kind of stuff. But also gave me like pretty much no downtime to process what had just gone on. Anything from the loss of my brother um, to the firefight that I had just been in, and all of that other stuff. It's just like you need time to process that, and maybe even just being with some of the guys that you're with who went through that stuff together. You need to have some of that time, and I think about the people who came back from like World War I, World War II, coming back from Europe or the Pacific. A lot of them came back on these big boats that took, a week or more to come across the ocean. And so as they're coming across the ocean, they're sitting there reminiscing with the people that they had just served with and talking about, their experiences, and they had some time, a little bit of downtime to process things in a place that was relatively safe, that they weren't, being shot at that point, or anything like that. Um, and so, like, that was probably a better way to come home than the way I came home, but I unfortunately wasn't afforded that luxury. Um,
Wow. And how yeah, does your mission start to tell your story
mm.
and to help others?
Yeah, so you know, a few years after coming back home, I had been, in and out of different therapies and stuff because I realized I was struggling. I was just not doing well myself. I wasn't the person that I wanted to be. Things were not going very well. Um, and some of the people that I had served with, they came back home. They survived combat. They survived being in a place where there were people who wanted them dead. They survived that, and they came home and they started taking their own lives. And
Mm.
to me, I was like, obviously one of those events happening is too many. Um, but when those numbers started ticking up and there's more and more people that I knew who were taking their lives, I said, I can't just sit around waiting for another phone call or another text message or something's telling me that another person that I knew had taken their life. And at that point, I think the veteran suicide numbers started to become a little bit more well known. The 22 veterans a day, that take their own lives, it started becoming more well known, and it started to become more apparent to me that this was more of a widespread thing throughout the military community than just me with the mental health issues that I had coming back home, and uh, the people that I served with who were taking their lives. Um, it was widespread throughout the entire military community. And so I said, I want to reach as many people as possible. I want to make it low barrier of entry for them to get access to positive, uplifting, hopeful kind of inspiration. Um, and I wanted to do that in a way that was easy for them to get access to. So I said, well, a podcast is free as far as the listener is concerned. All they really need is an internet connection of some sort. It could be their cell phone or their computer, or whatever. They can listen to it. And I want to make that content available to them so that they can find the hope and inspiration to continue living another day. And so uh, I started the podcast not knowing the first thing about what to do with a podcast. I didn't have a clue what equipment I would need, how to, host the audio files, or, finding guests or anything like that. As a matter of fact, the first few episodes I recorded, the only two people in the world who knew I was doing a podcast were my wife and me, because I was like, this is probably going to crash and fail. It's going to be totally miserable and awful. I don't want to go telling anyone about it and then having them all be like, oh my gosh, this guy doesn't even know what he's doing. But they turned out to be not that bad. And eventually I was like, okay, well, I can start telling people about this now, because I got a few episodes under my belt, and I can let people know about it. Hopefully they'll start listening to it. And I started getting some guests on the show, and it's taken off from there. The show again is the Drive On podcast. It's been going on for a little over 4 years now. And really the goal of the show is to talk to other military veterans or military spouses, family members, to share experiences that they've gone through, tough times, difficult situations, certain obstacles that they've had to overcome, and share what happened to them and how did they overcome these obstacles. What did they do? What tips and advice do they have for, like, any situation that you've been through that might have been difficult. You can always look back at it and say, oh, it would have been a whole lot better if I did it this way, or if I changed this instead of doing that, it would have been a whole lot better. Well, share that type of stuff with other people who might be at that ground floor, not knowing what's ahead of them. And so with the podcast, we talk to people like that who have gone through hell and back, and they came back, through the other side, and they've come out stronger for whatever it was that they've gone through. Um, and so when other people are out there listening to the show, they might feel like they're all alone. Nobody else understands what I'm going through. No one else has done this or been there before. Well, it's not true. There's plenty of people who've gone through many different difficult situations. And so when we share those stories, it gives some hope to those people. Be like, oh, you know what? If this guy can make it through, or if this gal can make it through, um, maybe I can make it through too. Maybe I just need, to kind of readjust my mindset and get through whatever obstacles I'm going through. The other thing I like to do with the show too is um, uh, share different resources that are available to veterans that may not be all that well known. A lot of veterans know about the VA and the services that they have to offer, whether it's mental health counseling or other different types of treatments that they offer through the VA. Those are fairly well known, but even some of those things are a bit of a mystery to some veterans, like what actually is being offered. So we shed light on that type of stuff, but also other organizations like nonprofits and other groups that offer services dedicated to veterans to help them with anything from mental health to financial counseling to careers and educational resources and all sorts of things like that that we talk about too. Because while a veteran may have gone through the VA and said, "Hey, there's nothing for me here. They're not helping me. They're not providing the resources that I need. Um, I've got no place left to turn." Well, that's not true. There's plenty of places that you can turn. There's plenty of different things that you can do, and um, uh, other people that are out there who want to help. It's just you may not know where to go. You may not know that these places exist. So I try to shed light on those types of organizations as well, because there's so much out there, and I think for anyone who might be struggling with anything, it doesn't matter, if it's a physical disability, a mental health issue, their finances, or they're stuck in a dead end career, or whatever the case may be. There are people out there who want to help, and we just need to get the information to them, uh, to the people who need the help, I should say, so that they can find those resources and get the help that they need to move on and live a happy and prosperous life. Throughout this whole experience, I also you mentioned the book that I wrote, Surviving Son, which is my story of my time in Afghanistan, serving um, over there and losing my brother, kind of the story that I just described. But it's about it's about our background, our family's background, giving people a little bit of a sense of who we were before going overseas. It's a tragedy, I think, when older veterans like World War II or Vietnam veteran or Korean War, when they pass away and they've never told their story to anyone, what they've experienced, and they just kept that bottled up inside all these years, and they never let anybody know what they experienced. How can we learn from history if we don't know what actually happened?
Mm-hmm.
Right. And so that's part of the reason why I wanted to write this book too. It's the Afghanistan war from one soldier's perspective, my point of view, what happened to me and the people that I served with. Somebody else who served right alongside of me could write their own story, and it could be completely different from mine.
Mm.
And I think it does everyone a disservice when we don't share our stories. And so that's why I appreciate opportunities like this to come on your show to share my story with your audience and the people that follow you, because that's just one more avenue to get the message out there. And I think when we have future conflicts, because let's face it, America is a nation that seems to get into conflicts all the time. When we eventually go into some other conflict, I want people to really stop and think, is this worth whatever the cost is going to be? Whether it's a financial cost, whether it's a cost of lives that are lost or lives that are changed through, physical injuries, amputations and traumatic brain injuries and other things along those lines, or mental injuries, the PTSD side of things. Is it worth the cost of all of this? In some cases, the answer is going to be yes, because there's just some things that are worth fighting for, and you need to have that kind of strength and that kind of backbone in your country. But in some cases, the answer is going to be no. We need to look at that and say, is it actually worth all this death? Is it worth all these billions of dollars in resources and everything else? And I think telling our stories like this will help to shed some light on that.
Yeah, and how did you do it? Like how you have this great personality, because I can feel it, just talking to you 2 minutes before the podcast interview. And how do you keep your mental health? How do you take care of your mental health?
Well, I've always I can't say I've always done this, but I started to look at mental health as a kind of an ongoing, continuous process versus like your physical health. Like if you broke a bone, like you break your arm, you go to the doctor, you get the X-rays that confirm, yeah, it's broken. They put the cast on, for however long it needs to be on. After that, they take the cast off. Your arm's pretty much good to go at that point. Maybe you need to do a follow up, a week or two later or something like that. But generally, you're not going back to the doctor on an annual basis to check up on your arm. Like it's good, it's done, it's healed. You don't need to continue to look after it, going forward. Whereas your mental health is a little bit different in that you do sort of need to look up or continue to look after your mental health because things happen all the time, every day, hour by hour. Things are happening to you that can affect you mentally. And it could be something as simple as a smell that just brings back a memory from years ago, or a sound or a taste or something like that that just brings back a memory. And those bad memories, they could be good memories, but when they're bad memories, it could send you into a dark place, and it could make you just really not uh, not feel like you're in a very good place. So when these types of things happen, you need to recognize that they're happening and do something about it. Not just do like what I did and stuff those negative emotions down and just try to forget about them, or try to drink drink yourself away from, like numbing the pain of whatever those painful memories are, or using drugs or anything like that. Like that's not going to help, because at the end of the day, you're going to sober up and those memories are still going to be there. Those negative things are still going to be there, and you need to deal with them in a healthy way. And so going and talking to someone, a therapist, a psychologist, counselor, whatever you want to call it, like those people are there to help you get through these bad times. Um, you know, it's not like you need to go for every little bad thing that happens to you, but sometimes you just need some help to get over those humps. And so, the way I look at it now is like my mental health counseling and things like that. Well, I may take breaks from time to time because sometimes it's intense and it's not easy to go through, and I might need to take a few months off and not go to any sort of therapy or counseling for a period of time. I'm in that stage right now where I'm just kind of taking a break. Um, but in a few months, I may resume and pick up some other forms of therapy that might be beneficial to me based on the stuff that I've gone through and where I am in life. And I just encourage everybody to um, look at mental health not as the way we used to look at it back in like the 90s, 80s, even earlier, is like if someone's going to see a psychologist, it's like, oh, that person's just crazy, and stay away from that person. They don't look at it that way. Look at it like you would when you go to your annual checkup at a doctor. It's you're just going to get a checkup. You're just going to make sure everything's still on track. Make sure that things that you didn't really think are a problem because you've just been dealing with it and living with it. Make sure that those things don't pop back up and become bigger issues. Like you go to the doctor, you have this new little lump that kind of showed up on your skin or something. You don't want to just ignore it. You're going to go to the doctor and say, like, hey, let's do some testing. Let's figure out, like, is this something I should be concerned about? And like that, no one would call you crazy or anything for doing that type of thing. It's like that's just a perfectly natural, normal thing that someone should
Mm-hmm.
do. Like you have this potential issue, like go get it checked out. And if your mental health is starting to slip and you're starting to have these negative thoughts, thoughts of hurting yourself or others, or thoughts of all these bad memories that you've had from years and years ago, uh, like go talk to someone about it. Like that's something that's popped up and you need to go address it. Don't just let it sit there thinking, oh yeah, it'll get better, I just need to get some more sleep or something. Like maybe that's true, but maybe you also need to talk to someone and help work your way through it. And so that's kind of the view that I've had on mental health for the last few years. Is that while a lot of times, especially guys, we don't want to go talking about our emotions or our feelings or any of that kind of stuff. And I was the same way when I first got back from Afghanistan. I lied through my teeth when I went to all the mandatory screenings for mental health. I was like, oh yeah, I'm fine, I'm sleeping great, everything's good, not having any nightmares, not having any flashback kind of memories or anything like that. No, everything's good, because I just didn't want to talk about it. I wanted to get through the screening, check the box that I went, and get back to my family. But that was the wrong thing to do. Looking back on it now, I needed the help, and that's why they were there. They were there to help. I just wish I took advantage of that help earlier, so that I didn't have some of the issues that I ended up with.
Yeah, when it comes to mental health, like that's my jam just because I deal with seven of them. So it's like I didn't need to have them all, but hey, I got most of them right
Yeah, right.
here. And I just want to share with people, so they can find tools and resources to help them out as well. And I love bringing in male to have the male perspective and that they need to take care of their mental health too.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, we all do. Male, female, doesn't matter. But I think women tend to talk more
Yeah,
about their
we
feelings and
do.
their emotions. It's just the kind of the way they're wired. There's nothing wrong about that. Guys just tend to not want to talk about their feelings, and maybe I don't know, they see it as a sign of weakness or anything, whatever the case may be. Um, like if something's wrong, like go take care of it. If your car is making a funny noise as you're driving down the highway, like you're gonna go bring it to a mechanic so they can take a look at it and fix it. If you don't know how to fix it yourself, you're gonna go bring it to someone and get it fixed. No one's gonna look at you like you're crazy because you took your car to a mechanic. Unless you
Yep.
happen to also be a mechanic yourself and you're like, well, why did you do that? Why didn't you just fix it yourself? But not as far as I'm concerned, I'm not a mental health professional. And a lot of people who are struggling with mental health issues are not mental health professionals. And even if they
Hmm.
are, they may need to just go talk to somebody else to go, you know, just bounce some ideas off of them, or because sometimes you're too close to the issue
Yeah.
yourself, and you might need that third party perspective to, just shine some light on something, or give a different point of view, a different perspective on whatever it is you're going through. And there's nothing wrong with that. Like just talking to people can be therapeutic. Having this conversation right now, between you and me could be therapeutic, right? It
Hmm.
doesn't matter, um, you know, the outcome of the situation. Sometimes it's just having someone there to listen to your side of the story, just to get stuff off your chest. That could be therapeutic too. And so having someone there, in a confidential space, where you don't have to worry about people, you know, judging you or questioning your motives or intentions or anything like that. You have a nice, comfortable place to just let it all out. And that is a great thing to have.
I love that. Thank you so much for sharing your story. Is there anything else that you would like my listeners to know about you or your mission?
As far as me and my mission go, I think for people who are interested, who either are uh, connected to the military, they're service members or veterans, or even family members of any of them. Check out my show, Drive On Podcast. You can go to driveonpodcast.com to check out that show. And for anyone who is interested in getting a copy of my book, Surviving Son, You can go to Amazon and just search for Surviving Son. You should be able to find it there. But the book, I think, really helps get the message out there of what it's like to be in combat. I go into some specific details of things that happened while people were in combat, and that opens up people's eyes. Whether you've served or not, it's good to know some of this stuff, because there's so many people these days who don't know anybody who served in the military, and
Mhm.
it's good to have those experiences so that you're aware of what happens when we actually do send our men and women overseas to go fight in these wars. And so that's why I want people to get a copy of that book and know not only what happens during the war, but also what happens afterwards.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, thank you. That is brave and it's needed because once again, not a lot of people talk about things like that. So I appreciate it, and I am glad to have you here and have this conversation with you.
Well, and thank you again for allowing me to come on your show and share my story with you and your audience.
And I forgot to say at the beginning, this conversation was thanks to Podmatch, an amazing community for podcasters as a host and as a guest to share the story and make amazing collaborations like this one. They also have tools and resources to help this podcasting world go a little bit easier. But thank you so much for coming on my show.
And thanks again for having me.
All right. Thank you so much for listening to another episode. You can find my show in all major podcast platforms as well as my YouTube channel. If you enjoyed this kind of content, don't forget to like and subscribe on YouTube or follow on your favorite podcast app of choice. And leave a review that will help others find the show. It's sure appreciated. Hope you have a blessed day. Bye bye.